the Sumerian flood, and the reset of consciousness. In the ancient stories of humanity, few myths are as universally echoed as the Great Flood. Found in the Sumerian epics, the Bible, and countless other traditions, this event has long been interpreted as a physical catastrophe, a punishment, a cleansing, a divine reckoning. But beneath the surface of these tales lies a deeper esoteric truth. The flood is not merely a historical event or a geological cataclysm. It is a symbol of consciousness reset, a moment in which individual awareness is overwhelmed by the collective force of hive-minded thinking. It is a story of the struggle between sovereignty and submission, and forgetting, awakening, and dormancy. To understand the flood as an esoteric cipher, we must look beyond its literal interpretation and into the hidden architecture of the mind and the cycles of consciousness that govern human perception. The origins, the flood before the Bible. Before the biblical Noah, there was Ziusudra, later Utnapishtim, the Sumerian prototype of the flood. In the Epic of Atrahasis and the Epic of Gilgamesh, the send a flood to wipe out humanity, not because of wickedness, but because mankind had become too noisy, too aware, too independent, a disturbance to the rulers of the cosmic order. The flood was not simply an act of destruction, but a correction, a reset of consciousness, ensuring that human awareness did not exceed its designated limits. In the biblical account, the same motif appears. The world had become corrupt, but corruption here can be seen as a deviation from control rather than mere moral decay. These myths suggest that history is cyclical, that human civilization, and more importantly, human perception, reaches thresholds where it becomes too expansive, too uncontrollable, and thus requires a reset. The flood is not just water, it is the overwhelming force of hive consciousness, drowning out individual knowing and replacing it with a programmed collective narrative. The esoteric meaning of the flood, drowning in hive consciousness. Water, in esoteric symbolism, can represent the subconscious, the collective, the fluid realm of thought that exists beneath surface awareness. A flood, then, is the overpowering of the individual mind by this collective force. When a flood occurs in mythology, it represents a moment where personal consciousness is swallowed by the greater current of collective reality, erasing previous paradigms and replacing them with a new, dominant framework. The mind as land, the flood as programmed thought. Land represents stability, grounded individual thought, and conscious awareness. Water represents fluidity, subconscious currents, and collective influence. From this perspective, the flood is not just historical, it is psychological and spiritual. Each time consciousness reaches a certain threshold, it is flooded with new collective programming that resets it, ensuring that individual awareness remains under the governance of the larger system. The Ark as the protected mind. In every flood story, there is an Ark, a vessel that carries select survivors through the deluge. This Ark is not merely a boat, but a symbol of preserved consciousness, the sacred space where memory, wisdom, and individual sovereignty are protected from being overwritten. To build an Ark is to fortify the mind against the overwhelming tides of mass programming. It represents inner gnosis, the knowing that survives when external narratives attempt to erase personal understanding. Those who do not have an Ark, the unprepared minds, are submerged, forced to adopt the new reality dictated by the floodwaters. In modern terms, this is seen whenever large-scale shifts in collective perception occur. Wars, cultural upheavals, paradigm shifts. Each acts as a flood, washing away old structures of thought and imposing new ones. Those who cannot anchor themselves within their own consciousness are swept away into the hive mind, adopting whatever new reality is placed before them. The cycle of floods, the recurring reset of perception. Flood myths do not belong to a single culture. They appear across civilizations, suggesting that this process is cyclical. Each flood represents a new installment of mass consciousness, a new program imposed upon humanity that dictates what reality is, what history is, what truth is. Those who recognize the flood for what it is can navigate it without losing themselves. Those who do not are absorbed into the new paradigm, unaware of the shift that has occurred. In the present day, we see floods of consciousness happening through mass media, technology, and engineered cultural shifts. The internet, while appearing as a tool for knowledge, has also created a new flood of information, overwhelming individual perception. False narratives, misinformation, and psychological manipulation serve as the waters that drown independent thought. Many have lost their ability to think critically, submerged beneath waves of digital conditioning. Trauma, fear, and crisis serve as modern floodwaters, breaking down mental resistance. Through emotional overwhelm, people are left desperate for new structures, eagerly adopting whatever is given to them. This is why controlled narratives are introduced during crises, to ensure that when the floodwaters recede, a new order stands in place. The esoteric lesson of the flood myth is clear. Those who do not build an ark will be consumed. The ark, in this sense, is not a physical vessel, but a fortress of the mind, an awareness strong enough to withstand the currents of mass programming. How to build your ark. Anchor in timeless truths. Do not rely solely on external narratives. Seek wisdom that withstands cultural shifts. Discern the tides. Recognize when a new flood is being introduced and question its purpose. Retain memory. Understand history beyond official accounts. Know what existed before the flood. Fortify against psychological influence. Limit exposure to engineered mass influence that seeks to overwrite personal perception. The flood is not a one-time event. It is a recurring mechanism, a cycle of imposed resets designed to manage human consciousness. But those who recognize the pattern can transcend it. In the end, the choice remains: be submerged by the waters of collective programming, or build the ark of your own mind.